When I saw this for the first time, I literally felt my knees weaken and my whole body just broke out in a cold sweat.
Now, if you're looking to get into one of these, mechanically speaking, you need to have a very healthy bank account. Not just to fix the long list of things that can go wrong, for the maintenance too. Really expensive.
Okay, you know what is incredibly tempting? The fact that you can buy a V8 powered all-wheel drive, sexy as hell, two-door German-made coupe or convertible for potentially thousands of dollars less than a brand new Volkswagen Golf GTI. Plus, we're talking about a car that was listed at over $160,000 when brand new here in Australia. However, we are talking about a used Audi here, and as we've found time and time again in so many of our videos, used Audis can potentially be reliability nightmares. Is that the situation with the RS5? Well, guess what? We're about to find out, because we're going to take you through all of the common issues. We're going to show you how they're aging, what they're like to drive and live with, and we're going to answer the question, finally, once and for all, should you buy a used Audi RS5? But first of all, there's the critical stuff you need to know, like the fact that the first gen RS5 is based on the B8 Audi A5 and S5, which is incredibly closely related to the same generation A4 and Q5. And this means the RS5, just like its siblings, was updated in 2012. And if you'd like to see a full review of the B8 series Audi A5, we've already made one. The link is down below. The RS5 was available initially only as a two-door coupe, and post-update a convertible joined the range. But both body styles feature a glorious naturally aspirated V8 sending power to all four wheels via a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. The vast majority in Australia will be just the single trim spec. However, in 2011 there was a limited edition model. But Audi being Audi, the list of potential optional extras was copious, to say the least. Now, that is just the bare basics. If you do need all the really specific details, go to ReDriven.com and check out the completely free RS5 cheat sheet. It's basically the ultimate used RS5 buyer's guide. Now, we'll get to the stunningly good looks in a second, but first of all, unfortunately, it's the bad news. What goes wrong with the exterior? Now, I feel like maybe Volkswagen or Audi employed a first-year apprentice to design all of the drainage channels, because right across all of their cars, we see this time and time again. There's so many issues with water ingress issues. When you read through the owners groups and forums, you can just find so many stories of owners having issues with water leaking into the car, in behind the dash, eventually onto the pollen filter. Then it goes through that under the footwells of the front, and then that finds its way to ECUs and modules, and it just causes all sorts of electrical issues. The problem seems to be that the drainage channels around the sunroof and even at the base of the windscreen, if the previous owner or owners haven't cleaned them regularly, you can expect water damage issues. Actually, here's a hot tip. If you are in the market, pour water all over the windscreen and see where it drains out from. It should drain from behind the front wheels. If it doesn't, yeah, you could have some future problems. And also, speaking of problems, the bloody sunroofs. This seems to be an issue across loads of different Audi models. In fact, I had a problem with an A8 recently where the sunroof just refused to close. Now, the issue here, according to the owners groups, is that it can be everything from electrical issues or calibration problems or the sunroof getting out of alignment through to the motor even failing. There's just a whole host of issues. However, what it might be, because this is what happened to me in the A8, the wind deflector spring resistance was too high for the closing of the roof. Basically, it's like the roof thought that the wind deflector was like a child's hand and would just not let it close. All it required was me to grab the car key, push the wind deflector down to a point where the window kind of closed, and then pull it out at the last minute, and then the sunroof closed. Really annoying to do when it's raining. Now, if it isn't this wind deflector issue, it might just require the entire sunroof to be basically recalibrated or reset to make it work again. However, some owners have claimed that even after being reset, the issue tends to come back again. And then when it comes to the convertible versions, okay, make sure these things work properly. They should work smoothly, seamlessly. There should be no weird mechanical sounds. It shouldn't get stuck or pause at any point. Also, make sure you check for any signs of water damage, because these things can leak as well. Fixing all of the convertible roof stuff also can be eye-wateringly expensive. Also, there can be a few other little sporadic electronic gremlins that owners have reported. Things like the rear spoiler just not activating, not going up and down. Also, just check all of the body electronics, things like the keyless entry, the door locks, power windows. Make sure they all work. Chances are they will, but owners have reported a few little issues here and there. Actually, just on the windows, make sure that when you open and close the door, they do that, because if they don't, thanks to the beautiful frameless design of the door, the glass can crack if it doesn't open and lower properly. Also, make sure that the fuel filler cap opens and closes and stays closed, like this one. Next up, in extremely hot climates, much like Australia, there are reports that any cars fitted with carbon fibre trim, the glue has seemed to have lost its adhesive over the years and the trim can just peel off. But now some really good news. The RS5 seems to be extremely resilient to any sorts of rust or corrosion. In saying that, if you do find any spots of rust or corrosion, that could be a good sign that the car has been in an accident and the damage has been repaired poorly. Basically, if you see any signs of rust on one of these things, walk away. Actually, you know what? It is critical to find out as much as you can about the car's history. Make sure you get a thorough pre-purchase inspection and go to ReDriven.com or click the link below to get a vehicle history check, because that'll tell you if there's any money owing on the car, if it's ever been written off, or even if it's stolen. However, the biggest issue by far with the exterior is that plenty of people have reported that just by looking at them, they've become pregnant. Now, it seems that the problem stems from the designers having this ability to have a exterior car design that has eye sex with you. And look, it's wonderful that it feels fabulous when it happens, but it's a little bit embarrassing when you start to convulse uncontrollably in public. Actually, I for one have suffered from this really serious affliction, because when I saw this for the first time, I literally felt my knees weaken and my whole body just broke out in a cold sweat. Also, look at it. It's a bit like Charlize Theron and Brad Pitt. It's aging so gracefully. However, in the same way that those two probably spend a fortune on nutritionists and trainers to be at their best, there's a high chance the RS5 is going to ask the same of you. Plenty of owners have complained at just how expensive these are to maintain, even in terms of consumables. Yes, it's a performance car, but remember, it weighs over 1,700 kilos. That means it's going to go through its consumables at a rate of knots. Owners also mentioned to us that RS tax is a real thing. Things like control arms, they're often billed out at crazy prices, both for the part and fitting it, when it's basically the same part as a standard A5. Even when it comes to stuff like the brakes and especially the suspension components, the struts, the actual OEM Audi parts are insanely expensive. Also, the aftermarket scene for these, it isn't huge, so while there are definitely some aftermarket parts that are both affordable and really high quality, actually getting them might take some time and effort. But the good news here is that there are some excellent experts out there like Michael Fortier from Red Mist Racing that can sort you right out. Also, we joined a whole bunch of owners groups and forums surrounding this car to do the research. And I gotta say, the amount of support and advice they offer is incredible. If you've got one of these or you're looking at buying one, join an owners group because they are legends. Now, what to watch out for inside? You know what? Not a whole lot, actually. Like any Volkswagen, there might be the odd report of some electronic gremlins here and there, although in saying that, that could be more to do with the potential water leaking issues. The sunroof roller shade, this thing, it's been known to come loose, but here's the hot tip. Audi Australia will try to charge you potentially $3,000 to fix this. The hot tip is to buy the part from Audi USA and just fix it yourself. You're going to save yourself a fortune. A few owners have complained that the MMI infotainment systems, they're starting to feel their age by now, and they're missing out on a few pieces of technology like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, even reversing cameras. However, according to other owners, they've complimented how responsive and just intuitive this old system is to use. Plus, if you require CarPlay, Android Auto, even a reversing camera or any of that stuff, there's heaps of aftermarket kits that will provide them. Some of the leather, and especially the high traffic areas like the entry points on the bolsters, it can show a bit of wear and tear by now. Obviously that is easily fixed by an upholsterer. However, I kind of feel like it adds a bit of patina to the interior design, and I for one like it. Speaking of liking things, let's talk about the interior design. It is, I think, nearly as good as the exterior design. Audi are renowned for their interior design, and this is a showcase of that. Everything is so easy to use because its ergonomics are spot on. These seats, we'll get to them in a sec, but oh my God. But just design and look-wise, I bloody love it. Some people have complained there's too many buttons. They're wrong. Buttons are better than touchscreens. Now, if you are in the market for one of these, you've got to get it with the Recaro style seats. The standard seats are fine, they do the job, but these things are just spectacular. I'm going to go as far as saying it could be my favourite seat I've ever sat in any car. They are that good. Also, plenty of owners have mentioned that the interior is incredibly resilient. You might hear the little rattles here and there, but not to any high degree. We couldn't find any reports of plastics turning brittle and rattling or cracking or anything like that. Even in this one, 11 years old, nearly 70,000 Ks, and the interior is holding up so incredibly well. Leather's still soft. Excellent for wear and tear. Now, as far as actually using the interior in terms of practicality, excellent size glove box there. Cigarette lighter and ashtray. Two cup holders. Now, some people complain that they're two different sizes. I think this is great because if you're like me and drink small pretentious coffees like a macchiato, it'll fit there. And if you drink other size drinks, it'll fit there. There's a spot perfectly sized for your phone just here. Little storage cubby hole here. Excellent sized door bins, nothing under the seats, nothing down there, no sunglasses holder. But yeah, pretty good for practicality. Also in terms of using the interior, yeah, the MMI system, I agree with many of the owners. I think this thing is really intuitive and just easy to use. You don't have to go scrolling through thousands of different menus. It's just good, it works. Actually, just on the features you're gonna get, as well as all of the usual stuff, there are some highlights in the optional extras. Try and find one with the optional Bang & Olufsen sound system because it sounds incredible. And also the Recaros, these are an option. Not only do they feel wonderful to sit in, the visuals of them, it just adds to the sense of occasion with the interior. Also, while every RS5 does come with a set of windscreen wipers, the only way to get the best out of them is by fitting a set of Wipertech wiper blades. Not only are they a breeze to order and they're easy to fit, they wipe so well that we use them on all of our cars. Plus, if you're fitting them to an Audi, you're going to avoid paying the exorbitant OEM prices that Audi will charge for their wiper blades. Also, as a thank you present to Brandon and Jacqueline that have lent us their car, who is standing right there, we're going to give them a free set of these bad boys. If you want a set for free and you've got a cool car and you live in Sydney or Newcastle or somewhere close, let us know in the comments or message us on the socials because you'll get a set for free if we film your car. Okay, in the back seat, I'm exactly 4 centimeters taller than 2026 Audi Formula One driver, Nico Hülkenberg. This is in my driving position and it's terrible. The seats themselves, very comfortable, but I'm assuming that Audi think people don't have legs because I have no leg room. It's crushed and starting to hurt. Can't feel my toes. But even though this is like torture sitting back here, Audi have given you some features and practicality and things to play with. There are air vents. There's also a power outlet here and another little pocket, hopefully not an ashtray. I think it is an ashtray, that's gross. There's a spot under my knee for stuff. There's a cup holder and there are they're not door pockets, but they're rear quarter panel pockets, I suppose. I don't know what they're for, but you're not going to get anything out of them if you can get your leg across that way. Now, as far as practicality in the boot goes, surprisingly excellent. There's heaps of space back here, plus this aperture is a good size. Also, the seats fold down, and there's even a little hole for like a ski port if you're a skier and not a snowboarder. That's weird, but also, Brandon just mentioned to me, you don't want to put anything back here that's susceptible to heat, like chocolate or ice cream, because the exhaust heats up the boot quite a lot and it will melt. And it's gross eating melted ice cream. Now, as far as the safety features go, look, I was going to talk you through them, but that'd be boring. So instead, how about we show you a graphic while providing one of the most satisfying soundtracks of all time. Okay, the common complaints and things to watch out for when you're driving. The first one is that many motoring journalists have no grasp of reality. Read through old reviews of this car and you'll see journalists complaining that it's nose heavy and that it just understeers into corners. I'm sorry, but if you're driving this thing to a point where it's understeering on a public road, you're the issue, not the car. Drive this thing with some ability and sensible levels of enthusiasm and it just grips and corners hard. And okay, yeah, if you really pushed hard on a track day, it'll probably understeer then, but you gotta remember, this thing, it was never intended to do track days. Next up, some people complain that this engine lacks torque low in the rev range and that you've just got to rev it out to get anywhere. Well, look, if you know anything about a naturally aspirated V8, yeah, that can be the case. But saying that it has any lack of torque is absolute bullshit. Okay, if you're caught in the wrong gear and floor it, the engine can be caught off guard. But then, just listening to the engine build revs from nothing is one of the greatest experiences of all time. Here we go. And then the downshifts. Please, so good. Plus this sort of engine response means that you have to lean on the engine, you have to work it to get the best out of it, and that's just so much more satisfying than relying on turbos to add all of the thrust. Now, another complaint is that some people reckon these things don't have enough power. Sorry, you're wrong. On public Australian roads, this is all the power you need. This is fantastic. And also, some people have complained that the RS5 can feel a bit on the heavy side, especially when compared to something like a BMW M3. Look, I don't know if it feels heavy as such, but it does certainly feel very, very planted to the road, but in the most premium way. The only other major complaint that we could think of is really the stresses that comes with maybe a mechatronic unit and the gearbox failing, or just the general mechanical gremlins. What's the story there? Is there any truth to this stuff? Unfortunately, I can't answer those questions because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Overall, they're not really considered to be unreliable. They have occasional ignition coil and spark plug complications causing misfires, which is pretty much typical for every Volkswagen really. They also have some PCV issues. That's the positive crankcase ventilation, the engine breather basically. It's a really complicated setup and it is prone to leaking, and when that leaks, it sucks air basically and causes all sorts of lean air fuel ratio complications. Pretty common problem. Now, oil consumption. They do suffer from oil consumption, especially if they've been poorly serviced, and that can also be linked to the engine breather issues as well, so they can all go hand in hand. The inlet and the back of the valves and the ports, they suffer badly from carbon buildup. Now, depending on how much you value all those horsepowers, if you want to keep them, you'll need to get that cleaned fairly often, probably every couple of years, just to maintain that cleanliness. Like a lot of Euro stuff in this category, they do suffer from coolant leaks and oil leaks. The coolant leaks from the thermostat and the thermostat housing and the water pump. The oil leaks from the valve cover gaskets, the timing cover, and basically anywhere where there's an oil seal. And that can be made worse if there's engine breather complications as well. The high pressure fuel pump on these can also be problematic. That's a pretty pricey fix too. Now the bit everybody's been waiting for, the timing chains on these things. There are 4 separate chains. Now each one of those chains has its own guides, its own tensioners and gears. Very complicated. Should any one of those timing chains or guides or tensioners or gears have a problem, that can cause anything to break in there, which is likely to cause catastrophic engine failure. Now I should emphasise that is not a really common problem, but it does happen. They can be more problematic if the vehicle's been neglected, but they can also be problematic if it's been well maintained. Usually, you'll hear a bunch of rattling and carrying on. It's worse on startup. Now that is a signal. Do not ignore it. If you hear any rattling like that, it's best to act fast. Now I'll just say that the timing chains on these are at the rear of the engine, which is pretty common for a lot of Euro and modern vehicles these days. Problem is access. If anything should go wrong with the chains, even if you've caught it early and you're just repairing it before it completely shits itself, you have to drop the entire front subframe, the engine and transmission. The whole thing has to come out to repair it. It's eye-wateringly expensive. Now the rest of the engines, these V8s are, I'm going to say, probably one of the most complicated domestic engines you can get. They are well designed and they cram a whole bunch of stuff into a relatively small space, which means their access is difficult everywhere. And if anything is going to go wrong, it's always going to be expensive. Oh, I nearly forgot. One of those chains is responsible for the drive mechanism for the power steering pump, the AC compressor and the water pump. It's terribly unnecessarily complicated. Now, if anything there should fail, that is incredibly hard to access and very expensive to fix. And I know I keep saying expensive to fix, but when you think about it, water pumps, power steering pumps and AC compressors are pretty much, they're the most common thing to fail on just about every engine, so you're likely going to have to do it at some point. But that's not all. Let's talk about the transmissions. We all know these DSGs can be lurchy and weird at low speeds and in stop-start traffic. That is pretty much just how they are. Now, it's not necessarily a fault or there's something wrong. Sometimes that's part of the transmission cooling strategy. They reduce slip on the clutches to try and keep the heat down, because when they overheat, that is very bad for them. Now, they're not considered to be unreliable per se, but like every other Volkswagen Audi Group dual clutch transmission, they are known for having mechatronics issues and clutch pack issues, and when they do, they are very expensive. You're less likely to have issues with it if it's been fastidiously maintained, and you're more likely to have issues with it if your engine has been modified. Like anything, you can reduce the likelihood of complications by servicing the hell out of it at least every 50,000 Ks. That means front and rear diff oils and transmission oil, do it all at 50,000 Ks. And I can guarantee you that isn't cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than a new transmission. Now I know that sounds like a lot of doom and gloom, and there are thousands of people out there that have had absolutely no problems whatsoever. Now, it's just important to know that if you're going to get into one of these, you've got to have realistic expectations, and this service scheduling has to be done fastidiously.
Now, if you are seriously in the market for one of these, it's also really important to consider what else you could buy for this sort of budget. With pricing ranging from about $30,000 to $65,000 here in Australia, if you want a naturally aspirated V8, sending power to all 4 wheels, wrapped in a sexy coupe or convertible body style, Well, about the only other car you could buy is actually this car's little brother, the Audi R5. However, if you're happy to sacrifice all-wheel drive for just sending power to the rear wheels, well, in that case, that opens up the options to maybe buy an AMG C63, BMW M3, Lexus RCF, or maybe even a Ford Mustang or a Maserati Gran Turismo. But no matter what car you're looking for, if you need car finance, make sure you hit that Driver link down there. Driver will do all the hard work when it comes to sourcing finance quotes from loads of different lenders. Applying is free, easy, and you can have the cash in your account in no time. But the big question is, should you buy an RS5 at all? You know what? Yeah, we think you should. Obviously, any RS5 you're seriously considering needs to pass a thorough pre-purchase inspection with flying colours. But as long as you're financially prepared to commit to the ongoing and most likely expensive maintenance costs, not to mention the fuel bills, and the premiums or the consumables ask, we think that the right S5 could be a future classic. Plus, the whole package is quite unique. It's one of the most enjoyable Audis money can buy, and even when you're not driving it, you can just look at it and fall in love all over again. However, for this sort of money, there is another car that we would highly recommend that ticks many of these boxes. It's this. But a question for you, if you weren't to buy this or this, yeah, what else would you buy instead? Let us know in the comments. See you next time.
Now, it's the same with the rest of the engine.
Cool. Not you, me. It's my line. Go.